BT Sport Pods.
Just very, very humble and very likeable.
30 years of the Premier League is the best ever achievement.
We could perform something really special here.
Welcome to the Premier League Storybook with me, Jake Humphrey. We now turn to one of the most incredible moments in sporting history. Leicester City beating the big boys and winning the Premier League. This is the 5,000 to 1 shot. It wasn't meant to happen like this. Look, we thought we had the Premier League sussed out. The big teams walk away with the honours, the also-rans fight for the European places, and the smaller clubs try to avoid relegation. But going into 2015-2016, everyone, and I mean everyone, saw Leicester City in that final camp, scrapping against relegation. Nigel Pearson had left the club after keeping the Foxes up the year before, despite having been bottom at Christmas. When former Chelsea boss Claudio Ranieri entered the fray, few people were impressed by the appointment. The thought of them winning the title didn't even exist. In fact, many tipped them to go down. A 5,000 to 1 price with the bookies to win the Premier League says it all. This won't happen. And yet it did. They got off to that flying start. Jamie Vardy banging the goals in, Claudio Ranieri charming the media and the fans, and they did it. Their captain Wes Morgan sat down with me for a chat about the season that must seem like a dream. But first, Robbie Savage was watching his old side's incredible rise up the table with excitement and gives his view on the magnitude of their achievement.
Not household names. They went on to be household names. Look at Mahrez, look at Kante. Look at the players. They had, how many of those players in that Leicester side would have got into a top 6 side? So they had a great spirit, a great unity. They had a manager who resonated with the fans. So it was obviously the best ever achievement for me in Premier League history, for Leicester to win at 5,000 to 1. But, the backroom staff, the training ground, a Beaver Drive, and they've now got onto their unbelievable new one. The sad passing of the chairman, his son's now doing it. Wonderful owners who care about the football club. And, they're as one. So it did resonate in the 30 years of the Premier League. It's the best ever achievement. For Leicester City to win the Premier League, wow. The big side had bad seasons, but for Leicester took advantage. They had most players fit. So you've got to give credit to the medical team. You've got to give credit to the players for keeping themselves fit. They were the best team. I know teams weren't at their strongest, but Leicester were the best team. They went to Man City, I remember. They took them apart in a game that I think BT covered. They were magnificent, and the way they went about it was, just unbelievable. So they deserved it. Again, for me, the greatest achievement ever in the Premier League.
One of Leicester's key players was Schmeichel, who was imperious in goal for Ranieri's side. He learned a thing or two about playing between the sticks from his dad Peter, who you'll remember kicked off this series talking about his Manchester United side winning the first ever Premier League title. He also spoke to us about watching his son achieve the same 2 decades later.
I think it's one of my greatest sporting experiences ever to see my son lifting that trophy. And it's giving me more pride than winning it myself. Absolutely. And I also, on top of that, think that it's one of the most important happenings in the Premier League. Without that, the dream doesn't live, and the dream has to live. Everybody's got to start the new season thinking that it's their season, not necessarily to win, but to do really well. And when Leicester go on and win the Premier League, it shows that football is still football. It's not just about money. It's not just about, so many systems and tactics, and it's football. And it keeps that little bit of romance in there. And I like that. I think it's a very, very important thing for the Premier League to have happened.
And we can't forget Claudio Ranieri here. My BT Sport colleague Lindsay Hipgrave covered games that season and gives us her memories of the manager.
I just loved the way he went about it the whole season. He's such a nice person. No mind games, just very, very humble and very likeable. And he just kept moving the targets throughout the whole season, didn't he? It was like, right, we want to get to 40 points. Right, we're safe, we're survived. Then it's like, well, we might go sort of for the top half, and then we'll just secure that European place. Then we'll just secure the Champions League place. And then finally they sort of got it over the line, but he never once sort of admitted that he thought it was a genuine possibility that it could happen. He kept the players' feet on the ground throughout the whole thing. He was like bribing them with pizzas and stuff, wasn't he? If they kept clean sheets. And he kept like a really steady team throughout the whole thing. That amazed me as well, because we all just called him the Tinker Man. It was Ranieri, the Tinker Man. And he had this really settled side. I think it's just the best example in sport of someone making something greater than the sum of their parts.
So let's get into it. How did this incredible feat come about? There's no one better to talk to than Captain Wes Morgan. He played every minute of every game in that season, an incredible achievement on its own. And he was central to the story of the 5,000 to 1 shot. Let's go back to the 2014-2015 season. Nigel Pearson had built a decent side, but you'd avoided relegation in the end, and then he got sacked in June. I'm just sort of reminding you of what happened after that infamous video was leaked. So let's go back to that 2014-15 season and Nigel Pearson being in charge. What was the feeling like at the club? Because I always got the impression from the outside that Nigel was really popular with the players.
Yeah, it was fantastic for me. He brought me in, and after half a season, he gave me the captaincy, so I had a close relationship with Nigel. I felt at the time, he brought in players that he knew were the type of characters to get us out the league, the kind of characters that Leicester needed, not necessarily the best talent out there at the market, but the ones that were capable of doing the job.
Yeah.
And had the character and the steel to carry it out and fulfill what we wanted to do, which was get promoted. So, after a couple of seasons, we did it. We got promoted out of the Championship and was into the Premier League. And our time in that first season, we spent most of our time in and around the bottom and couldn't pick up results. And things took a turn, and we picked up results. And I think at that stage in the season when we started to turn it around, a lot of people thought it wasn't going to be possible to avoid relegation, and we did. And, some people dubbed it the Great Escape. Yeah.
And then Esteban Cambiasso came. What did he do for you and do for that club generally? Because his moment there is kind of forgotten by a lot of people, but he was quite instrumental, though, wasn't he, to making a change at that club?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first of all, when we heard the rumours Cambiasso could be coming, everyone's buzzing.
It was like that from the outside as well. I remember.
Yeah, you couldn't quite believe it, I suppose.
No, you couldn't, because this was like pre-Premier League winning Leicester, so it wasn't. Yes. And also the league was different then. The Premier League wasn't enough, I don't think, at that moment to bring him to Leicester, right? But suddenly he did, and it was like, what?
Yeah, so I don't know how Leicester managed it, pulled it off, but they convinced someone of his talent to come and join us. Obviously a promoted team, favourite probably to go down, as many promoted teams are. Having the likes of Cambiasso is fantastic, and I think the players just wanted to learn from him. He's got all that experience with some of the best players of the world, playing for some of the best teams, and just to see what he can do. And he might not have had the legs like he used to, but he still had the quality, still had the brain, still had the knowledge and experience to help the boys. And we learned a lot from him. We learned a lot in terms of mental strength, how to, face opposition that's probably better than you, and deal with the challenges. And I think he brought into the team that, that mentality to have no fear and go into games believing in yourself and anything's possible.
But then you've lost Nigel, and then Cambiasso leaves as well. And it felt a bit turbulent at this point. So what were your expectations of the season?
Yeah, Nigel left, going into the season 15-16. I think everyone's a bit unsure. At that time, during the off-season, I'm away with Jamaica for international duty, and we was in 2 tournaments. So when Claudio came in, it was I didn't get a chance to meet him. He messaged me because I got to the final of the Gold Cup for Jamaica, and he wished me good luck. And to be honest, I was just hoping to come back to Leicester and be starting. But he showed faith in me. He put me straight into the team. I think I only had a few days training before the first game of the season. And yeah, I think we was all not sure what to expect, and probably still a bit shocked with the departure of Nigel.
Yeah. Okay. So you've had a phone call from Claudio. He's such a brilliant man manager, right? Makes people feel great, right? So what was he like when you got back and you'd finished your international duty and you had time with him?
Yeah, he was great with me. Like I said, I had a couple of days training to settle down and get used to his way of work, his tactical plan, and I was straight into it. And we started off okay, and we made some key signings, namely Kante as well. So he was a big difference in where we was the season before and the season when we won the league. And from Claudio's point of view, he was fantastic in terms of firstly dealing with the media, the pressures, deflecting it from the players, and with the players itself, just keeping his focus, keeping his calm, and not getting carried away.
Focused on what at the beginning? Like, what was his message for what you could achieve that season under him?
I think it's the same message you're saying to the media, and that was, we just want to avoid relegation. Want to get to the magic points total where we're definitely safe. And we saw throughout the season that even though we was flying high, doing very, very well, and there was talks of what we could achieve that season, he will remain with what he was saying, which was, we just want to avoid relegation. Yeah. We want to get to the magic points total.
Saying that to you as well as the media.
Yes, in-house, and that was the message, and I think a lot of people outside of the team would get carried away with what Leicester could do, but the players were very grounded, and Claudio did a great job of keeping us grounded and not getting carried away with all the media talk. And for a long time, our focus was just hitting the milestones, avoiding relegation. Maybe we can get to the top half, maybe we can get into Europe. Let's see how far we can actually finish, and each milestone got ticked off along the way.
It did. Let's talk about some of those players then. You mentioned N'Golo Kante coming in. That was an interesting one because it wasn't like this £55 million signing that got everyone excited. It took us a couple of months, I think, as the football watching public to realise what this guy brought to the Premier League. What about in train? Did you see on day one, or was it the same for you, a kind of a slow realisation of what you'd managed to buy?
For us, it happened on day one. The impact he had on his first training session. I remember walking off the training field, and I think it was Andy King looking at me. He's like, "Where the hell did this guy come from?"
What had he done?
Like, he's incredible. He was just like, some players take time to settle. Some players, don't do much or don't have much of an impact. He was flying into tackles. He was winning everything, intercepting, getting the ball, bursting through players, striking it. Short distances, long distances. He was literally doing everything, and I was like, "Where's this guy come from?"
Did you know anything about him before then?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And we have a lot of players that come through the door. Yeah. A lot of players that probably come through and disappear and don't think a second thought about. And his impression, I don't think there was any other player that I've played with or come across that's made that impression on not just me, but the whole squad in terms of impact from day one.
That's amazing. And what about Robert Huth? Because he was your centre-half partner. How quickly did that relationship blossom, and why do you think you made such a great partnership?
Yeah, Huthie, bags of Premier League experience, joined Leicester, and I learned a lot from Huthie in terms of doing the job right and making sure your defensive unit is on point. And we had a great chemistry. We're pretty similar in terms of no nonsense defending, I'd say. No nonsense defending, aggressive, making sure you dominate your opponent, and that's kind of my mantra in terms of how I firstly go about defending. And he is pretty similar in that vein. So straight away, we had a connection on the pitch, and off the pitch we got on very, very well, which always helps. And if you get on well, it makes life a lot easier, and you understand each other a lot better.
But on the pitch, in terms of the relationship, it was easy, right? It just happened. You didn't have to work too hard at the relationship between the two of you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we understood our strengths and our weaknesses of each other, and we complemented each other, where Hughie, might not want to get too tight, I could get tight, you'll cover, or vice versa, and just knowing each other's strengths, we knew we could dominate most players in the air. So just understanding each other's strengths, and if he was struggling at any point, I was there to help. But that goes for the back four. I think we're such a solid unit, especially in that winning season. And yeah, it was perfect chemistry because we was good defenders that understood each other and knew each other's jobs.
And you won your first 2 games of the season. I don't expect you to say, "Oh yes, I knew exactly what was coming after that," but what was the atmosphere like around the place? Like, had pre-season felt different? Had it felt like you're going to be okay? Or when the results started coming, were you taken by surprise?
Yeah, well, for me, as I mentioned earlier, I was away for the whole of pre-season. So, I was watching through social media, spoke to the manager briefly when we got to the final of the Gold Cup, and I didn't certainly know what to expect going into the first game. But from what we saw, and how we went about it, was like, wow, it felt a little bit like we continued the momentum from the end of last season, right. Where we were settled more into the Premier League way of work and was much more confident in our own ability, instead of going into games thinking, right, we're playing Man U this week, we're playing Liverpool, if we get a point out of this, that's going to be a good result. I think we was going into games with a different mentality, like, let's impose ourselves on the opposition and let's see what they got. We've got some fantastic players. Let's see if they can handle us. And that was the mentality. And I think you saw, some of the outstanding performances that season from the likes of Vards, Mahrez, struck fear into the hearts of many, many defences.
And how hard did Claudio work to make it enjoyable? I mean, I remember, we were covering these games for BT Sport, so the post-match interviews, dilly-ding, dilly-dong, and talking about pizza after games and all that sort of stuff. How important from the inside was that to what you managed to achieve?
Yeah, like I said, the way he took the pressure off us, I think that was vitally important, because to keep momentum going, you got to stay focused. And if people are distracted by what we could achieve when it's only, December, January, you can lose your way quite easily. And for the media, he was fantastic, saying when we keep a clean sheet, we'll get pizzas, his one-liners, dilly-ding, dilly-dong. Those things, was great and helped us in terms of keeping the pressure off the players. And in-house, he was very much serious, in terms of, right, this is our game this week. This is how we're going to go about the result. Everyone needs to know their jobs. And it always helps when you're winning games. It always helps when you're winning games, because you have to just keep the same spirit, the same momentum, and, just make sure the boys are prepared as best as possible.
And what was the self-belief like at this time? Look, I know it's different, but I remember Rio saying that when United were in their pomp, you just believed you were going to win every game you played in. And even if you didn't, it didn't hurt to think that. It made you a better player. Did you ever get to that point at Leicester?
I think that's the thing with football. When things are going well, you don't think about the negatives. You just go into games knowing that, right, I'm capable. I'm confident. I know I can do this job. But when things aren't going well, you start picking up negative results. That's when that doubt comes into your mind. And yeah, that self-belief is so important in terms of the difference between winning and losing, and having that mentality to go into games knowing that you're a fantastic team. We're strong in all these areas. We've got great players that can produce something out of nothing, So all as defence, for example, all we need to do is make sure we stop their strikers from scoring, keeping the back door shut. And having that belief that you can do it goes such a long, long way. And that was the belief in the camp. We knew that our team was solid. The back four, the goalkeeper, we can keep most attacks quiet, if we can keep them at bay for as long as possible, anything could happen with the players we got on attack, the players we got in midfield. Anything could happen, and that was the mentality throughout the season.
And we've spoken about Claudio making it nice and relaxed with his sort of nice comments in the media and bits and pieces like that, and a couple of the quality players. We'll talk about them further in a moment. Was there anything else, though, that happened behind the scenes that we perhaps don't know about that helped to make this feel like it just all came together perfectly?
Yeah, it's difficult to put a finger on because it just seemed to all click.
Yeah.
It seemed to all click. And
so was it easy then? Like, I know that sounds mad, but when things click, suddenly the things that are hard become easy. Was it easy?
You could say that to a certain extent.
I'm not saying you didn't work hard. Obviously, like you're grafting and everything, but
I think
it just flowed.
Yeah, I think we just had the momentum. Yeah. And I believe a big part of our success for that season was the season before. What we went through and how things turned around. And probably what Nigel built in the first place, that core of players that have been together for so long. And probably what we did off the pitch, in terms of activities, socialisation, just things that would make us closer and stronger. And that bond we had on the pitch, I think that carried on through the seasons, and especially into the season we won the league. And then it all kind of clicked, with the addition of Kante, players playing at the top level of their game. It all clicked, and it felt like every game. I'm not saying it was easy, but it just felt like we knew what we was capable of, and we believed in our ability, and I think that's the big difference.
You also were able to believe in your strikers, weren't you? I mean, Jamie Vardy broke Ruud van Nistelrooy's scoring record at this point. I wonder what that does for you as a defender, where you get into a place where, as long as you and your back line and your goalkeeper do your job, then they'll take care of business at the other end of the pitch.
It makes your life so much easier, trust me. As defenders, I pride myself on keeping a clean sheet. After a match, if I go home and we've not conceded, I'm the happiest guy in the world. And I think that means more to me than actually scoring a goal, to be honest. But if you have that mentality and the whole back four is on the same page, it can go a long way, because when you got the likes of Vards up front, players coming off the wings, that can score goals out of nothing, you're always in with a chance, So knowing you're going to keep a clean sheet or keep the scoreline to a minimum, because there's a large period of the beginning of the season when we won the league that we didn't keep a clean sheet, but we kept it down to one, and that was enough for the other players to still score, maybe one, maybe two, maybe three, and pick up results. So it goes a long way having a solid back four, a solid defence, a solid keeper, a solid midfield unit, because you got strikers that can score, and you win games by scoring goals.
And did you feel that teams consistently underestimated you and the damage you could do to them? Because we kept watching from the outside thinking they'll work this Leicester team out in the end and they'll see the pace and the danger and the directness of them, but they didn't.
Yeah, it's probably, from reflecting back and looking back and probably just hearing people talking about the season, I'm not sure anyone really took us seriously. I think, historically, teams that's had a good start normally start to fade off, in the first half of the season, towards the end of the first half of the season. And even though we was flying high, getting results, I don't think no one really thought we was capable of, going all the way. Even the players, for me, certainly, I was just happy we was doing well, but at the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, right, I don't want to be in a position we was in last season. I want to make sure we're clear of that foot of that table and we're in a much more comfortable position. So, we didn't even think that, we weren't taking ourselves seriously in terms of winning the league. And I know certainly a lot of other teams, people watching from the outside, wasn't taking it seriously. And I think there's a point which everyone in the squad kind of probably stopped and thought we could actually do it. And yeah, for me, it was when we played Man City away. I think it was the end of February. We beat them 3-1, and I thought, wow, we could actually do something amazing and incredible here.
Did you think it was win the league though?
Yeah, that's the point for me when I thought, wow, we'll just beat Man City, who's unbelievable in itself, and we beat them comfortable in their backyard 3-1, and I think that's when I thought, you know what, we've actually got a chance. When it's last couple of months of the season, you start to think yourself, we just need to keep this going. And that's when you probably start, thinking more in terms of you can't make a mistake, you can't do nothing wrong because it could cost us. And yeah, you have to stay focused and your mentality has to be strong because you don't need those thoughts entering your head.
It's true, I mean, that game was live on BT, that
right.
Leicester City game. And we covered the game and we were like, well, if they've just done that to City, that they really, really could do this. Still, people were questioning it and not believing it. But I think from you personally, and I'm interested in this, it's suddenly a very different challenge, isn't it? Winning games at the start of the season, playing with a bit of freedom, having a bit of fun, having some pizza, taking people by surprise. Like, teams do that, right? By the time you get to February or March and you're beating Man City at the Etihad and you're top of the Premier League, teams like Leicester don't do that. Hasn't been done before, hasn't been done since. So how did you deal with that mentally when people really were then talking about the league? And I'm sure you internally started to think, bloody hell, man, we could finish our careers with the Premier League winners medal.
Yeah, well, you summed it up really well there. That was kind of the course of the season. And then you start getting to the business end where, right, you can predict mainly where teams may finish. And, when we beat the likes of Man City at the Etihad, you start to think, wow, we could finish high here. We've got a really good chance. It's funny, though, because I think the next game was Arsenal and we lost. And I think all season we only lost 3 games. And, yeah, we, really took us, it really hit us hard. And I think the fact that Arsenal celebrated, because we saw some picture of those, the team celebrating in the dressing room, and the way they celebrated was like, this is Leicester, and why are they celebrating like that? It should be, pretty normal for the team of Leicester, second season in the Premier League, to pick up a win. That should be, bread and butter for them. And the way they celebrated, I think that spurred us on a little bit. We was thinking, right, they're actually starting to take it seriously. We need to up our game and
take ourselves seriously.
Yeah. We could perform something really special here, and I think we didn't go on to lose a game after that. And we flew, and obviously we got to the finish line and became champions.
And look, I know you're modest and self-deprecating, right? And that's part of the reason for the success in your career. But you have a really pivotal role at this point. You didn't play in the Premier League till you're 30. You're leading the team from the back line. Those younger players are looking to you. Those new arrivals in English football are looking to you. So what did you learn about leadership and captaincy at this point in your career?
I think my qualities is, I always describe the way I captain as leading by example. So whoever joins the team, they'll see the way I work on the pitch, the way I'll put my body on the line, the way I'll, go first into any situation. I think that helps players become confident that, we've got someone that's going to, take the hits for us, put his body on the line, the least we can do is help him and put our bodies on the line. And in terms of, players joining the squad, always make it a thing of mine to, help players as much as possible. Young players joining the first team, foreign players joining us,
And how would you do that?
Just interacting, communicating with them, taking time out to try and make them feel comfortable, making sure anything they need, because it can be daunting. Young players coming to the first team, it can be intimidating. Players coming from a foreign country that don't speak English is very, very, very tough. And I understood that, and I always felt it was my responsibility to make players feel as comfortable as possible. And when they're on the training pitch, understand them and know how to approach them to help them in the right way, whether that's being firm with them or having a arm around them kind of approach, and that's the way I kind of look at my leadership, the way I look at how I captained, and hopefully the boys that I've captained, can vouch for me and say I've been a good captain.
But at the same time, you've got to think about yourself. You've got to look after your own performance on the pitch as well. Was it almost a positive that this came quite late on in your career, that you weren't 22 or 23, like you've done the hard yards building up to this point?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I probably did it the other way around. People normally start to fade off towards the end of the career and have their successes probably early on when they're probably younger and more at their peak. But yeah, joining the Premier League when I was when I turned 30 or when I was 30, is first of all, was a big, highlight for me in my career, because all I ever wanted was to have that shirt with a Premier League badge on, and once I had that, I was content. I was very content that, yes, I made it, this is what I've always wanted to accomplish in my career. Who knew that I was going to be, a Premier League champion, FA Cup winner, playing Champions League, and it's still, looking back and reflecting on it, it's still a surprise. But I always believed in my ability. I always believed I was capable, and I think the recognition I got, especially when I was named in the PFA Team of the Year when we won the league, which is voted by your peers, is the biggest reward I could get, because it shows that, right, I belong at this level, people respect my ability and know I'm capable to perform, and that's what means the most to me, when I look back.
The best football of your career?
The best football of my career.
Did you play it that season?
Probably, yeah, you would have to say, because in football there's always ups and downs. Spent half my career, League One, Championship, getting to the Premier League and and staying there and finishing on a high. There's highlights throughout all of that. But that season when we won the league, playing the best players in the world, and keeping them quiet, definitely playing the best football, I would say, in my career is definitely that season.
We can't talk about that season without talking about Riyad Mahrez. Obviously, you'd played with him before, hadn't you? Like, he'd come up with you. I'm just sort of interested in why you think players like him and players like Jamie Vardy and players like you and numerous others in that team made that step up. Like, it wasn't a collection of former Premier League greats that Leicester had brought together here to win this Premier League title. This is players like some League One players, some Championship players winning the Premier League. Is that a team spirit conversation, do you think?
Yeah, I think, joining Leicester, we had such a togetherness, such a strong core to our team. And I think anyone that kind of joined us, brought into what was about, and we made them feel so welcome. And you become part of a family. You become part of something, special. And, if you win, lose, draw, you're going to fight for it together. And that's the spirit we had in the team. And to say, we got players that came from, non-league, from France, second division, and become Premier League legends, as a testament to the recruitment department, first of all, how they found these gems is amazing. And obviously the coaching team and everyone that's behind the scenes that's gone on to support and help these players become who they are today, they need to get a special mention too. And yeah, I think just a big part of that is the spirit in the team and having how we help players that have got talent believe in themselves and become the best they can be.
You spoke at the beginning that Claudio Ranieri was taking it almost one game at a time or one milestone at a time. Survival, top half, top 10, Europe. Do you remember the moment where he started to say to you guys, like, the title's on the line here? Was it openly discussed?
Probably, right towards the end when you start doing the maths on it and you start thinking to yourself, right, we've got, so many games left. We need to win this amount of games to guarantee we've won this. And you start getting, a lot more serious in terms of, right, guys, we need to win this game.
Yeah. So did he become less relaxed and less jovial at this point, do you think?
Yeah, it's not clear in my mind, because it's a bit of a whirlwind at the time. But from what I feel, it felt like, especially after that Man City game and then we lost against Arsenal, I think things start to turn up a little notch. And, right, our next game after that, we need to win, because we're not just going to... We've worked hard so well all throughout the season, and we're not just going to let this go. So we need to make sure we just don't throw this once in a lifetime opportunity away. And I remember him just, definitely in training, nailing down the hatches, making sure everyone is still focused, not letting the heads drop and
or getting carried away,
getting carried away, and just staying on job.
It's interesting how you remember it, isn't it? Because there's part of me that thinks surely you have this photographic memory where you remember coming in every day and what was said and how it was said. But I think for a start, you have to be so into it to be able to perform at the level that you were that's not possible. Secondly, you have to be in flow. And often when you're in flow, you don't really remember the things that happen. You just remember that it went okay. So I wonder whether actually your memories of that season is kind of snapshots of individual moments in games and results and things, and then just more like a feeling of how it was at that time. Do you know what I mean?
I think definitely more a feeling.
Yeah.
I remember kind of the season as a whole. So in terms of like the good feeling we had with winning the games, getting results, performances, being at a high level, Vard's milestone, Mahrez's bit of magic against, the likes of Chelsea and stuff. Little things, Kante breaking up challenges. I think there's goals against West Ham, equalisers and stuff like that. And it's just a feeling, that good feeling in the team and a few snapshots of key moments throughout, the goals I scored, obviously. And it's not a full recollection of the whole season, and it's fantastic talking about it because, it reminds me sometimes of little moments that kind of forgotten, and it's great to remember them again.
Well, let's talk about the moment then that you won the league. Is there a part of you that wanted to win it on the pitch? Or actually, in some ways, the fact that it was won when two other teams played and you all went to Jamie's house and you got together as a squad, is in some ways that the most fitting way for you to have won that title that season?
I think, we'll win it any way we can. In an ideal situation, we'll win it on the pitch and we can celebrate on the pitch in front of our fans. But at the end of the day, if the team challenging us loses and we win it that way, we will 100% take that.
Yeah.
And I think it was great. We got together to watch the Chelsea-Tottenham game and see what happened, because obviously you've seen the videos and the moment it happened and the ecstasy and everything that went with the result. It needed to be captured, and it was fantastic. It was captured, but even more fantastic that we was together for that, and it was a moment that lives with us forever.
It's interesting you said that, because I sometimes think when someone's in the midst of their professional career, they don't want people getting the bloody camera phone out every 5 minutes. They don't want the TV crews at the training ground or whatever. But actually, the years after is where you're really grateful someone did film those moments. Yeah,
because I remember actually there was a moment where it was like, we wanted us to watch the game together. We don't want no cameras there. And I remember the media at Leicester had to kind of convince us, like, listen, guys, this something special could happen that may never ever happen again. You know, it needs to be captured. And we had to think about it. So, you know what, we'll just let the Leicester crew come in. And obviously Vard has hosted the game for us. And I think there was some press outside his house, you know, so I don't know how they caught wind of it. But yeah, you know, we're so happy that they did. Well, the Leicester media team was there because, you know, even now, you know, I was on my Twitter the other day and I looked at the moment where I was getting dragged around Vard's kitchen, you know, and yeah, something's got 1.5 million views or something like that, which is crazy. And yeah, those moments, you know, just to have them to look back on, you know, you can't beat it, to be honest. And it's a fantastic time that needed to be captured.
And what did you do? Did you make a speech or go around and chat to the players individually, or was it not formal like that?
There wasn't time for speech. It was just crazy. It was just, you know, everyone just going ballistic, to be honest. Everyone going ballistic for a long, long time. And then there was a real quiet moment where everyone was just looking at their phone and responding to messages, making call to their friends and family and loved ones. And there was a real down moment, probably just catch our breath back after shouting and screaming for so long. And yeah, you know, I remember, I think I gave a speech when we came back into training the first time. And yeah, you know, everyone was just buzzing. I remember speaking to the staff at the Leicester training ground and the players, and the manager obviously made a speech, and it was a great moment. But no, in the time, at the time when it happened, there was no speeches. Everyone was just grabbing each other, and it was just pandemonium.
I don't blame you. And then you get the game where you're given the trophy. I mean, we had that really moving rendition of Nessun Dorma by Andrea Bocelli, you lifting the Premier League trophy. I wonder what you were thinking about that day, whether it was the guy that had grafted for all those years, playing for Dunkirk and playing for, you know, Forest in the lower leagues, or whether it was the sacrifices that your parents and your family had made to get you to the games, or whether it was, you know, your partner and your children who got the chance to see this. What was on your mind that day?
On the day, you know, those things you mentioned, you know, come after.
Right.
You know, definitely think about, you know, all the sacrifices people have made for me to help me along my career, especially as a youngster. And just, you know, times at semi-pro level, Dunkirk, and just getting opportunities to play back in football in terms of getting a trial at Nottingham Forest. You know, all of that stuff definitely got reflected on after. I think on the actual day, you know, it's just a grand occasion. You know, there's fans everywhere. Your normal routine is out the window. You know, I'm in the changing rooms. And mine, you know, everyone has their routine. But I'm getting dragged from pillar to post. You know, everyone's talking about kind of the post-match routine, what's going to happen, where you're going to stand, what you're going to do. And kind of football,
surreal.
Yeah, football's out the window, you know,
and
I take my pre-match preparation very, very serious. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, we still have got a game, but it didn't feel like it was a concert, you know, and we knew we had still a game to play, but it just didn't feel like it was a game, you know, and rightly so, you know. It's such a big moment in Leicester City's history and a lot of players' lives that we had to make the most of it. And I think the day was perfect. You know, the scenes, the singing, the fireworks, the crowd, you know, and obviously the moment I got my hands on the trophy.
Special moment.
Absolutely. You know, and I think you can probably, you know, I love watching the replays back and seeing that moment I lift the trophy. And I remember just taking a moment, as soon as I got my hands on the trophy, just closing my eyes and taking a mental picture, a moment that I knew that I could store in my head just before I lift the trophy. And I love seeing that on the replays when you see the trophy lift. You know, I close my eyes for a split second and then lift the trophy, and just wanted that to last in my head forever.
Amazing. And it will never leave. You've done it.
Thank you very, very much.
Once you've got it, it never goes. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those stories.
Yes, my pleasure.
I bet it is. God, I loved chatting to Wes. You know, will we ever see anything like that ever again? I say no, but then we weren't expecting that, were we, from Leicester? So It was just brilliant to be transported back to that season, and such a pleasure hosting BT Sports coverage that year. And one criticism often levelled at that team is that all the big boys had an off year, which actually is nonsense, because the best team that season has to win the title, and that's what they did. And I wonder what those failing, struggling bigger clubs made of their title success. Well, actually, Cesar Azpilicueta was in a Chelsea side that finished a poor 10th that season, and he was actually watching Leicester with complete admiration.
They were a bit of a strong side, they were such in a huge confidence, you could see they were so well prepared, they were a team that they were really a team when they had their own qualities in their own players, and you could see they made a difference. I think for Leicester to achieve what they achieved and the way they did, it's, for them, of course, was a huge achievement, and you could see the importance as well to be a team. In different parts, one player made a difference. In another game, another made a difference. But you could see that they work really well together, and I think they all came up together in the right time for everybody. So it was a huge achievement, yeah.
N'Golo Kante was one of the stars, of course, of that famous Leicester title-winning team, and ended up leaving for Chelsea that summer. Azpilicueta was dumbfounded at his new teammates' energy.
You could see that he could run everywhere. He could steal balls from everybody. He could play. You could see that he was an important player. And he's such a nice guy, And when he trains, he's the kind of player where you don't want to get near him when you have the ball, because sometimes you feel safe, but he puts the foot around and he steals the ball. He can run, he can cover a lot of pitch, and and then when he has scored some nice goals too. He has great qualities both defensively and offensively.
Well, that's it for now. Thanks for joining us on another Premier League storybook. It's time to bring the series up to date though, with one final chapter. Join us next time to hear how Pep Guardiola has revolutionised the game.
BT Sport Pods.